All right, welcome everyone. This is Navigating the Sales Wilderness. Today we're focused on unleashing sales enablement strategies. And we have some great speakers today. I'll be your moderator. I'm Naomi Walker. I'm the Director of Strategy and Operations at Closer IQ. We're a talent strategy firm focused on go-to-market. And I have spent my entire career in sales, started in fashion and found my way over to tech at Closer IQ. I'm about to hit 6 years later this year, which it's been a bit of a wild ride. The joke is that I've touched every role, including sales enablement and work in a lot of operations focused pieces that tie into that now. Melody, I'll kick it off to you to intro yourself, and then we can kind of go around from there.
That sounds great. Thank you, Naomi, and nice to virtually meet you. Hi, everybody. My name is Melody Schwartz. I'm the VP of Enablement and Operations here at Spiff. We are modern commission software to support revenue teams. I'm headquartered in the Silicon Slopes, which we're very proud to represent. Seems fitting for our backgrounds today. A little bit about me. I have been in the high growth SaaS world for, I actually just recalculated this, about 15 years. So it has been an incredible journey. Similar to you, Naomi, I've been in several different roles. I started as an SDR, so that's a near and dear kind of root to my heart. So I really love enablement, and I'm just excited to dive in today.
Lovely. Laura?
Awesome. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Laura Wheeler. I'm the VP of Revenue Operations and Enablement at Speckit. Speckit is an in-app, just-in-time learning platform. My journey, I have also been in the high-growth SaaS for about 15 years. So I started actually, I got into it because I was a lead singer of a band, which, that's a story for a different time. But I've held many positions, also starting in inside sales through sales leadership, enablement, building teams, and now leading both the operations and enablement function. And so it's very exciting to also have similar backgrounds to you.
Great. Stephanie?
So I love how we're all dating ourselves, whether we like it or not, as elder millennials. Hi, everybody. Also part of the same kind of cohort. I have done the journey to enablement from sales as well. So I'm currently Senior Director of Revenue Enablement at Loopio, which is a response management platform. What is that? Well, those dirty little RFPs and security questionnaires, which so many of us as sellers cringe when we think about. We solve for that. That's all you really need to know. I started in marketing, actually, and then started doing field sales way back in the day. We're talking selling into stores. So forget high-tech sales. We're talking booking sheets. We're talking driving store to store, trunk full of product, all that good stuff, before I transitioned into tech about 15 years ago. And the majority of that in high growth as well. So it's good to be amongst friends, probably similar battle stories, war wounds, and trophies along the way. But I'm excited to learn from each of you as well.
Absolutely. That's the field sales story is reminding me of my days selling in the showroom on Fashion Avenue in New York, which is very different than just talking about software today. But I'm going to go off of these really fun backgrounds we have and keep with the camping theme. So let's start off with the first topic on mapping the sales trail and kind of digging that into how each of you define sales enablement in your own way, because I think we've all seen very different definitions, and really what you see as the greatest impact on the tech ecosystem. I'm going to have Laura, you kick us off here.
Sure. Whew, sales enablement. Well, first, I think it's actually really great to start with what is enablement, because I do think that it needs to be demystified. I call it enablement on enablement. I don't know if I had $1 for every time somebody just said, hey, we need a training on that. But I think when you define enablement, it really is the force multiplier of your go-to-market strategy. And so when you think about it in the tech landscape, especially startups, it's usually going to be like your first hire. And that person needs to be a Jack or Jane of all trades. And I think there needs to be a mutual agreement of what this role is going to bring the organization and then how you actually hire to it. It's really hard. You're trying to find what works. You're trying to scale up your tech world at your startup. And spend is being watched like a hawk. The number one KPI of a startup is how much money are we burning? So how is this person going to come in and affect revenue? How are they going to amplify your go-to-market strategy? Where is that growth potential? And I think it's really kind of the unifying moment where product engineering, sales leadership, marketing, customer success, wherever that lives within your organization, they all come together and understand how this person is going to amplify the business. So it's not an easy person to hire for, because every company is different, but certainly there is a force multiplier that this person can bring, and it starts with understanding what that role is.
Stephanie, what are your thoughts on this?
So I have had a very different experience where in my last 3 roles, I have been brought in as the first enabler after the sales team has already had success. So typically what that looks like is you walk in and you're like, yes, I get to define all the things. I get to chart my own course. Amazing. But you walk into this huge amount of training, knowledge, process, and documentation debt. And typically what's happened, and this is the flip side of when enablement is not hired early, you suddenly may have 20, 30, 40 sellers, and you've had commercial success, and you know your customers well, but your sales process is not officially defined. Your Salesforce reporting and your data hygiene and your career growth maps are all over the place. And it takes a solid couple of months to just figure out, and to keep with the bonfire and camping analogies, like just get oriented. You are in a deep, dark forest. Where are you? What side of the planet are you even on? Where is north? Get yourself situated. I think the wonderful thing about doing enablement in high growth SaaS in particular is, and I like to joke, there's 42 flavors of enablement, right? We have more flavors than like an ice cream shop. Because it's true. Every person you talk to, you can have the same job title, but what that actually means for each individual scaling business in terms of the practical day-to-day is so different. So really taking the time to get oriented, understand what got the company to where it is, right? And then understand where you need to start making changes to get to that next phase. Because to use the quote, what got you here won't get you there. So you can really be the impetus for change in the company for better and become that multiplier that Laura just referred to.
I love that. And I love that between Laura, your story is more of this like Renaissance hire, right? Versus Stephanie stepping into a more mature setup, but with a lot of, collateral debt, a lot of things happening that you have to sort through. I'm curious, Melody, where do you feel like you kind of landed in your journey in enablement?
Yeah, I agree with all of the above. I've seen all of the different flavors. I've seen all of the different types of kind of, organizational levels of maturity that enablement offers, and also that you walk into as well. I was actually thinking about this in prep for this session, which is, there's a lot of dialogue around, becoming more efficient. I think every organization right now has a focus on that. Laura, you commented on spend. I agree. And so when I think about I'm going to call it the modern definition of enablement. You can interpret that however you like. But, when I think about the modern definition of enablement, as I see it today from my lens, is that, enablement is the efficiency engine of a revenue team. And, the role is to close any gaps that prevent you from becoming efficient, whatever that means for you, whether that's, pipeline management, deal hygiene, closing deals, stage age, whatever that means for you. But your job is to be that efficiency change agent. I agree with you, Stephanie. You want to be that North Star of change in the organization. The other thing is that there's different kind of flavors of enablement depending on kind of where your organization is at and its maturity. So, you want to think about as it relates to your role, you want to think about strengths in program management. So maybe in an early stage, your role is maybe a sales coach, where your exact role as a coach, but maybe at the end of the day, you're building programs, so that way what you need, Stephanie, to your point about what you need moving forward, you've already got that locked in your arsenal. So you want to have strengths in programming. The last thing I will say, and this is a little bit of a personal story, I'll get vulnerable for a moment. My comp plan has recently been changed from project-based MBO to I am now on the same comp plan as our sales leaders. And boy, has it made a big difference in what I accept, what I not accept, how I prioritize my time. So I know, snaps, right? Mm-hmm. It's huge. And I think, it was the right time to do that. I'm very excited about it. But if you want to make a big impact, change how you're compensated, because you will get credibility with everyone around you for that decision. So I said a lot of things. I hope that was helpful. But yes, I think we're on the same boat around what we're doing and how it's important.
Yeah, and I think that compensation piece is very aligned with SPIF, right? And aligning that like commission element as well. But it is interesting because I think for executives right now and just leaders of all these high growth SaaS companies, efficiency, getting more out of less is such a recurring theme. And I think there's a lot of big decisions to be made how that affects people in enablement, who has a seat at the table, how that reporting structure looks, how those compensation structures look, all of that to make sure that things are aligned within the organization.
Totally.
All right, continuing on the camping theme. Equipping your sales backpack. All right, we're going to do a little bit of like core essential sales enablement tools, technologies that are just must-haves. What resources come to mind quickest when we're really thinking about those essentials? So Stephanie, I'll have you start on this one.
Oh, because I got like a whole metaphor around this. Eh? Okay. By the way, I'm based in Toronto, in case you just caught that A and didn't get the accent before now. All right. So if we're talking like just survival essentials. Okay. So my nice to have bag includes like sunscreen and a hat, but like, let's be realistic, just survival. I think for me, it comes down to 4 key things. So, a tracker or map. So let's assume you have to have a CRM. Right? Any kind of sales team, you need something, whether that is a Zoho or hopefully a Salesforce for you, you need something. Otherwise, you're lost. I'm going to call Gong or similar conversational intelligence your binoculars. You need to be able to look around and see what's happening around you. Who's saying what? What's going on? You heard a noise. What does that actually mean? Go figure out who's talking about what. It's so important when we think about conversational intelligence to be able to track what are people saying before and after you have that call, what's being raised, and by the way, what can you learn from other sellers and people involved in different sales cycles, especially as a manager or an enabler. We need to live in that tool. Set up your trackers, be all creepy. If you are not blocking a couple hours a day to listen to calls, what are you doing? And sorry, not a couple of hours a day, a couple a week. Snacks. I liken an LMS tool to a snack. Like you could survive a day or two without some kind of food, but it's not fun. So whether that is a tool like Speckit and you have a prompt where your learners can get the just-in-time coaching or feedback as they navigate Salesforce, or whether it's a purpose-built tool like Lessonly, where you can actually have all your onboarding content and training content live, you need something. And lastly, water. Like without water, none of the rest of it matters. That's your communication tool. I'm certainly of the camp. I love to hate Slack. I love to hate the 57 different options that people can get a hold of me throughout the day, right? Carrier pigeon, cell phone, text, WhatsApp, all the things. But making sure you have a good central communication tool, whatever that is for your business, is key. Because you cannot be working in a bubble and you need to make sure that you're feeding that information across the business. So those are my quick 4 things: your tracker, your binoculars, your snack, and your water. That's the end of my analogy.
I love the analogy. That is absolute perfection. Melody, I don't know if you can keep these analogies going, but I either way, I'd love
I don't know about the analogies, but I will say you had me at snacks. I will do my best on the analogy front. But I think when you think about the essential tools that you need, I'm just not thinking of all of the snacks like s'mores. You need s'mores. S'mores is like sales kickoff, in my opinion. That's the fun. It's the fun part. So, look, I think when you think about the essential tools and technologies, I think you need to define what programs run each quarter and what is always on. So like when you have a roadmap for a roadmap, what is like a trail map? I'm a bit of a glamper, I'll be honest. So this is a struggle for me, but look, I think you need to define what programs you have each quarter and then what's always on. So when you know what programs are running each quarter and you know what's always on, you know where to slot in the right technology and the right features, depending on what your current tech stack offers. I've been on the other side of the fence where you evaluate a technology and it looks really cool. There's a benefit, but you're kind of hopeful that it has a home. I think those days are behind us, I'll be honest. And so, you really have to think about, does it align to a program where, maybe you can ensure that when you're rolling this out with your leadership team, they understand the process, they understand the skill, they understand how they're going to complete whatever task you're asking of them. But then I kind of have a checklist in my mind that I run through, which is like, does it help my team have a better conversation? Does it save time? Does it help us drive better behaviors? Does it motivate our sellers? And then is the solution credible? So when you're programming, you just have to think about like those four things, because ultimately any question that you're going to get asked to kind of pitch whatever you're kind of programming, it has to answer those four things. So it's a little bit broad. I love all the tools, but I think for me, I would think about it like that.
Yeah. I think there's so much like project management elements of enablement, and having frameworks like that is crucial and so helpful in moving things forward.
Yeah. And maybe the most crucial framework might be your compass. Oh, I don't know. We're just going to go with the analogies here. But having a charter or some sort of values and missions that you can then have. We were having a conversation last week offline, and it was about having like your super slide. If you are presenting over your program or your business case for a headcount or your XYZ, having the organization understand and having that resource of a super slide of what enablement is, who you are, how do you define it, what's in scope and what's not. I think that can be your kind of North Star compass that you can bring to the organization to help you then prioritize and demystify some of the potential conflicts that could come up. So that allows you to say no to in certain instances. So that would be the only one I had besides maybe friends. Like stakeholders? No? Okay, we'll just go past it. I would like to have my essentials. I don't want to camp alone. I mean, some people do, but I like to camp with friends. So you need those like stakeholders at side. So stakeholder buy-in.
I love how none of us thought about like a tent or like something to keep us warm. We were like very basic with Maslow's hierarchy for this one.
Yeah, we need shelter. But actually, this is a good segue, because if we're gathering friends, we're going to do that around a beautiful fire. And our next theme that we're going to dive into here is building a campfire collective, right? Doing that with the other leaders in different departments and owners within your company. So how within sales enablement do you foster that cross-functional collaboration that helps to actually get things done and drive sales success, right? All right, Laura, I'm going to pitch this one back to you, since you already kind of leaning into it.
Yeah, got to get those stakeholders, those friends. I think, there's something that always resonates in my mind when it comes to you want your enablement person to be cross-functional, so you have to give them a seat at the table. I'll say it again. You want and you need to give enablement a seat at the table. It's just as much as giving the enablement team visibility into what's happening within the organization and how things are being made and decisions than what we are working on. It just helps make us better enablers internally. And so it kind of goes both ways. One, give us a seat at the table. Two, I've learned, oh gosh, in my last 15 years that communication constantly and extreme transparency is the only way that you can continue to have cross alignment in a company. And the larger the company, the bigger it is, even the smaller company, you're going to have a multitude of like changes. And so making sure that everyone is on the same page. I think understanding what each one of your stakeholders cares about and then communicating that over is something that's really important. So I guess a tip or trick would be how I work just with product marketing. So understanding what my product marketer cares about, what they really want to be informed about. Maybe you just throw out like a DACY or a RACY model and making sure that you are communicating often and clearly what is happening, both from a here's what I'm working on or what I'm seeing in the business, and then bringing that back to the stakeholders. So I think it's a lot of moving parts. And when we say it, it sounds easy. It sounds easy, but it is actually really complex and complicated. So it takes effort, I would say, every day to make sure that you are conscious about the cross-functional alignment in an organization.
Yeah. Melody, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, Laura, I couldn't agree with you more. Truly, first and foremost, you're building relationships and you're fostering creativity intentionally every day. You want to have a really good hold on, what does the other party want to accomplish? And, what does success look like for them? What do they need to report out versus when does the ball kind of pass over into my corner? You have to be really detailed and intentional. I've always said over the course of my career, and I'll dive into some examples here in a moment, there's a difference between checking the box of go-to-market and working cross-functionally and feeling like it's moving the organization forward. And I find a lot of organizations kind of fall into that trap where they are completing the task, but then you're not seeing the result on the other side. And the reason why that doesn't happen is relationships, creativity, detail, constant alignment. So I agree with you, Laura. I think I'll share it, and I just got off of an operations call, so it's a little bit on the top of my mind, but here's how we run things at Spiff. We've got a monthly operations call where marketing ops, sales ops, customer success ops, we're all on the call, and we talk about our key projects and key initiatives as it relates to some of the programs that we're running that quarter. And then there are some things that kind of naturally flow into that conversation. We also have monthly pipeline calls where we review top of funnel, whether it's additional data points that we need to gather or progress to our goal. And then also on the go-to-market side, I work really closely with product marketing as well. We've got a go-to-market motion, but I have found that it's really helpful when enablement supports that go-to-market motion, but then when that go-to-market motion kind of starts to iterate on itself, maybe with a new product or messaging, that's where you really shine, where you suggest adjustments, kind of maybe some sort of reinforcement. Maybe you pull some additional reporting and analysis on, the price per seat on the product, and you notice how it kind of trends quarter over quarter, or, so anyways, I think, go-to-market wise, building relationships, but also that second iteration of any sort of release is really where you can step up and show the value of enablement. There's certainly more, but those are some things that are top of mind for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Stephanie.
So I totally agree, obviously, on all that. You want friends around the fire, unless you're deliberately going into the woods by yourself, in which case, don't bring the friends. There's some things you need to go alone. But I mean, joking aside, I think being really strategic and deliberate, making sure you have alignment on your why for why you are doing programs that involve other departments. The only way you can get that alignment is truly understanding their why, how they're measured, how they're comped, what it is that they're working towards, and why that's important to their function, right? And then you align accordingly. So totally aligned with that. I think one of the other things that, I've learned more over experience over the years is sometimes one of the most valuable things you can do besides give quantitative analysis and data is add the qualitative color. So being their eyes and ears in rooms that they're not in to help provide context and the sentiment of the reaction of the sales team. It's interesting when somebody's presenting, they can't see all the little boxes in the Zoom room. But if you're actively sitting in on a meeting, but your goal for that meeting is not to listen to the speaker, but to watch the faces of the sellers who are in the room. Suddenly the value you can start to bring it to that partnership with your speaker or cross-functional partner is insights on where there may be a lack of confidence based on certain areas of the training or presentation or new product launch. Those are the intangibles that only you can uniquely bring to the table. And you can dig in and be that trusted source with your sellers to say, I noticed you flinched on this when we talked about pricing package changes. Why was that? Like, help me understand what that flinch was, because I trust you as a seller. I know your gut instincts are great. Why was that a reaction for you? That can be the value add that we can really get more investment from our partners cross-functionally when we can start to offer those things.
Yeah, I think those softer, more qualitative pieces are so important. And now that so much is over Zoom and virtual, and I think that tools like Slack make it easy to stay up to date asynchronously, but there's different formats for different kinds of conversations and the different kinds of collaboration. And I think that those softer pieces can get lost sometimes if you're doing everything over email or Slack or a shared report document, rather than being able to kind of talk through the more maybe sensitive parts of the why, or why, people can push back with numbers, but maybe there's something a little bit more emotional happening there that has to do with what sales reps are experiencing at the front lines. Good topic. All right. Trailblazing growth. So high growth startups, that means things are moving quickly, they are shifting, and sales enablement needs to not only catch up to that growth, but hopefully stay ahead of it, right? So let's talk through some of those strategies to scale sales enablement along with the growth plans and the BHAGs of the companies that we're working at. Melody, I'll have you kick this one off.
Yeah, you got it. So when I hear scaling sales enablement, I think of a couple things. So one, you want to get a good handle on what your assumption is around your headcount ratio. So maybe it's 25 AEs to 1 enabler, or I've heard it as little as 10, like a 10 to 1 these days. I know, right? News. And so
where are those budgets? Story Melody, but
I know.
Where's this report? I need it.
So you want to educate everyone around what is the current and future state, and maybe some potential models around enablement. First, you need to kind of do some education to get everybody to understand what is your trajectory. And I think that's kind of been loosely mentioned in some of the dialogue here around internally selling. So this is no exception. You want to arrive at some sort of assumed ratio just for staffing, and also, knowing that there's a ramp time. So from your structural perspective, you want to have a couple things in place. For scaling sales enablement, something that I would recommend, and I think this is something that we're kind of thinking about as well, is scaling it by function. So if you've got, a down market team, a mid-market team, and an up market team, having kind of one person to, get the information from the organization and tailor it to the audience. The other thing I will say is that, like, when it comes to scaling sales enablement and technology, just really keeping it simple. You really want to have some sort of a map, and this is maybe more on the operational side, but this is a little bit of your roadmap. You know, I have like sales process, actions, definitions, gates, content, you know, notifications, comms, owners. And so you want to have that central guiding document, because at the end of the day, no matter how you scale, you're still on one sales process. So also, obviously, there's a line item for technology use in there as well. So from a people side, you want to establish your charter. And then from a process side, you want to make sure your sales process is as clear as it could be, depending on where you are as an organization.
Melody, I'm curious, when you think of scaling by department, what are your strategies for trying to reduce any friction that could cause with other departments before you're kind of getting to scaling that side of things?
Yeah, it's tricky because any cross-functional role kind of lives in the middle. And so, look, I think the way that I have answered this in the past is that enablement is the delivery vehicle. And so, you know, let's say there's a couple of owners for maybe product training or product enablement, right? That's great. So that way you have a lot of really great information. Enablement is responsible for packaging it up and delivering it to your sellers. Therefore, then you can enable on it and you come around for a second iteration, depending on what you've learned in the first time. So I hope that answers your question. I do agree that it gets a little fuzzy sometimes, but I think you just have to remind everyone of the responsibility. And don't forget, you can always come back around and reinforce it. And that's something you can own and drive as an enablement team.
Yeah, absolutely. Laura, I'll pass it to you.
I agree. So, and I think that department thing is actually really interesting. I've actually seen the reverse where it happens, where then enablement then happens in silos and you're doing duplicative work. And it's really frustrating. That is like the opposite of scale. So you definitely don't want that. And where I've seen that happen is when you have a centralized and a decentralized enablement team, and it just gets really murky and fuzzy unless you have those lanes. So it is definitely a delicate balance. I would probably be remiss if I didn't say that I would scale enablement. I have a philosophy that a lot of people in the organization wear an enablement hat. So if we think about the force multiplier of how we can actually scale ourselves, the main buckets I see are: you build it, you deliver it, you coach on it. And we as an enablement team, you know, facilitate those. But there are people in the organization that can also do that. And so I do spend a lot of time in my previous role, speaker coaching. So making sure that I'm not just the only one that has to facilitate it, and bridging the gap over so that maybe my product marketer is a 10% enabler. My sales managers are 50% enablers. No, they would never like agree to that, but like maybe they're about like 25, but they're, you know, taking some stuff off of my plate to where we are all then, you know, the 1 + 1 = 5 model. And so that's how I'm thinking about kind of scaling a more lean enablement team or operations team is like partnerships across and making sure that they can do a little piece of the function, so that, you know, we can at least touch more people in the organization. So that's how I'm kind of thinking about it.
Yeah. I'm quick tangential question on this. Have you found when you're kind of getting these additional like champion enablers across sales managers or marketing leaders, that usually it's like data that can help push them to get on board with pushing it? Or is there something else that you have found?
Totally. I would say it's two facets. One, it's you can show them that, you know, they can have a piece of, you know, the success of this program. But I think the biggest driver is career development. A lot of people internally don't or didn't really know, like how many of us here started in sales enablement? Now, if you did, don't raise your hand. No, I'm just kidding. But a lot of times, like we didn't know about this role, and we probably came up through sales or maybe finance or like, I don't know, some other part, or marketing. And there are people internally that will naturally raise their hand because they inherently have that desire to make people better. Now, then in their brains are probably thinking, I want to be a sales manager, but I'm like, what about enablement? So it also gives them kind of a test drive into what enablement could be. And then I start building my bench internally to steal them on my team. No, I have done that before. So I think there is actually an inherent desire to want to try it out, like it's a little test drive. So
I think it's so true that a lot of people fall into sales enablement roles rather than it being this like clear path that they felt destined for. Stephanie, what are your thoughts on this?
So I think it is, and Lori hit on this so well, it's when you have a smaller team, and yeah, ratios are a thing, but it's not just headcount ratios, it's how many different types of roles and or segments you support within those ratios. And what I mean is if you have 25 people you're supporting that all have the exact same job with the same ICP and same messaging, it's a heck of a lot easier to enable that group than 25 people who technically are across 3 segments, 3 different job levels, and there's different ICPs for each segment. And potentially even different like qualification motions, right? Very different thing. I think sometimes whether we like to or not, we end up in that shared enablement responsibility model where maybe it's product marketing, maybe it's a sales manager, starts getting empowered to do some elements of enablement. Be very careful, because what can start to happen is if they aren't equipped to understand the impact and ripple effect of some of the changes or projects that they are running with, you can end up with a mess where scope wasn't properly defined, the right stakeholders weren't brought in, because the sales leader, and Laura, I can see you cringing, but because the sales leader or whoever it is, they just didn't have the information to know. And despite our best efforts to put together project plan templates and RACIs or DACIs and all those kinds of things, if you don't live in enablement, which by definition is, I always like to think of it like a trampoline where you have the different connection points to all the different departments, and we function to boost our sellers up. This is what we do, right? And we do that through those tension points. But if people are only connected to 2 points, guess what? You're going to flip off the trampoline because that net's not going to be there. So that one for me is a very thin line between how much we want to empower other departments for enablement activities versus how much we bring them in where we still own it and they are core stakeholders or contributors and just have a piece of it. When I started in enablement, I actually got Brene Browned, which is a thing. And my CRO basically said to me, because I was a seller and I was a type A personality seller, so like used to controlling for all the variables in my sales process. Well, if I do this and this and this, and I map out my mutual action plan, it increases my likelihood by this and all that good stuff. And he said, get comfortable being uncomfortable, Stephanie. Mm-hmm. And my initial interpretation of that was like, oh God, that means I have no control. Like that means I just have to like be accepting of chaos. And that's not remotely what he meant at all. I came to learn once I went through a few battles of, no, it's actually the get comfortable part. It's learn how to thrive in ambiguity. Learn how to thrive when you have 25 net new requests and you and your team only have capacity for 5. Because scaling can either stress you out and burn you right out and spit you out the other side, or it can fuel you. And that's a mindset choice. And not everybody's built for it, but really trying to get comfortable being uncomfortable was for me a difference maker in being able to handle that consistent high scale, lot of ambiguity, needing to be agile and change priorities, sometimes literally every single day for like months on end. But finding a way to thrive without clear definitions is incredibly helpful when you're scaling.
Yeah. That comfort in the discomfort or uncomfortable, as well as just time management and learning how to prioritize things when you have an endless stack, I think is important in any role, honestly. All right, we're on our last question. And this one is about what's always top of mind for sellers is how to position their product and what their or service that they're selling against the competition, how to stay ahead. And I wanted to talk about in this one how sales enablement plays into supporting reps doing that and kind of those general challenges. So Laura, I'll kick this one over to you.
Yeah. Oh, competition. Well, it's always changing. And because hopefully your company is also innovating and changing along with it. Actually, what we've done recently is, and it kind of, I would say, grassroots. Our sellers are on the phone every day. They're talking with potential prospects. And I think what we've really kind of benefited from is allowing them a forum. So we have these monthly, we have many different avenues for this, but whether it's a Slack channel, that you can post chorus calls to, or I just saw this new competitor, or I heard this on the phone, but then also making sure that that's documented and we create a space to talk about it, because we can only internally from like a product team or a sales team or operations, like identify who's going to be in the competitive landscape. So we know the knowns, but we don't know the unknowns. And so and especially in the startup world, you're, Swiss Army knifing so many different types of competition. So we bring together the sales team. It's totally optional. We bring data that we've collected from here's some, competitive points that we've seen. Here's your win rates against these competitors. Here's where they're showing up. Let's talk about this. I want that qualitative data. And we actually invite our product team too. And so it's really kind of a company-wide. Now we're a small startup. So, but we allow the sellers to just feel heard. And in turn, that actually then hamster wheels internally where we can start to ruminate and ideate on, are there potential trends moving forward? So I think instead of the age-old, sales leader maybe coming to you and saying, this is our new competition, it's let's take a step back. Let's validate that. Use Steph's 5-6 whys, and she'll tell you about that. And foster a community of sharing. And I think that's actually something that in my enablement charter, one of my bullet points is we foster a community and a culture of sharing. And that, in turn helps everyone get better. And so that's kind of how we're approaching this competitive-ish landscape and bridging together the enablement and sales world.
Awesome. Melody, how are you approaching this?
It's all the things, right? When you're thinking about your always on campaigns, or programs, the reason why you want that is to be able to respond quickly to market conditions. So whether that's through, we have learning huddles the first Friday of every month. So that's where we have a similar kind of effort that Laura is talking about, where we just are able to kind of chat through things together and address topics quickly. And so, I think underneath it all, you need to be fast. I don't know how to say that. You just need to be fast. And so I'm talking about programming and getting organized, and I'm talking through the other side of my mouth around just speed. But I do think that your ability for your sellers to respond and feel equipped to different market conditions is highly dependent on, your ability to turn things around quickly in a digestible format for them. And so there's an element of speed. I think I've said this on a couple of kind of MSP events as well, but it's not the big that eats the small, it's the fast that eats the slow. And you just have to think about that. And so whatever you're up against, making sure that you have an always on campaign, a newsletter, a learning huddle, maybe you jump into a team meeting, but then also, consider the speed at which you're doing so as well, because you want to get that out to the field pretty quickly.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of the camping equivalent, maybe like packing light so you can hike a little quicker.
Ooh, that's a good one.
All right. Well, we'll close this out with you, Stephanie.
Okay, so I feel like you need to explain my whys now. For the record, my personal charter is I ask why 3 times at a minimum. Okay, it is super annoying at first, but the reason why I do it is because when we get a new request, often the justification for the request, and the common one we all hear is like, I need training. Okay, but why? And you'll get a very surface level answer the first time. So I ask why again. And then you tend to get, like a personal opinion. My team XYZ. This group, my group is frustrated. Okay, why? And it's not until the third or the fourth why where we actually get to the root of the thing, the real operational challenge or the business challenge. So yes, I'm that person. Minimum 3 whys. There's no maximum. Good luck to everybody if you get in that conversation with me. But it really is to get to the root because we cannot do it all. We can't. And actually, this is an interesting one for me when it comes to staying ahead of competitors. We do not want to be the competitor that we're up against. Right. And if we're thinking about a hiking analogy, if I am going for a hike and I want to beat someone who's 6'2", I'm 5'7". I am not going to try to put on high heels to make my gait longer. That's just not going to work. I'm not going to try to be that person. What I need to do is lean into what I do really, really well. So maybe my product or services is incredibly good at helping people find direction. Maybe it has an element to the tool that helps gauge elevations and terrain. We're keeping going with the mountains. 30 people still wrong. But lean into what you do really, really well. Don't forget about the competition, but maintain who you are and what makes you great as a business or service provider and double down on that as your competitive edge. If you are Coke or Pepsi, you are not going to all of a sudden try to be like a fruity guava syrup, whatever, with no caffeine in it. That's not your customer base. They don't want that from you. They're coming to you for the caffeine hit, maybe sugar, maybe not, but be really clear on who you are, what you're great at, and what your customers really value from you. That's my hot take on staying ahead of the competition.
I love that. Beautiful. This was great. Thank you to all of our speakers. I think that a lot of this really helped us to cut through some of the mystique around sales enablement and where it plays its part. I think one of my main takeaways from this is, as we know, like communication is always key. Communication is water. And also, I think this is a thing. I'm not an expert on this, but similar to if you want to build a fire in a windier environment, when it comes to the why, just keep digging and you do it a little lower in the dirt. It's so protected from some of that. I think so. This could be completely bad advice. I am from New York City. I don't really know these things, but I think that's a thing. But thank you everyone for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.